Welcome back and welcome to Vlogmas day 17. This is going to be the first of my top 10s of the year. It's always so hard kind of putting the top 10s in before the year's out, because what if you read something awesome on the 30th of December, and I do still have some non-fiction on my TBR, but I feel like I have less non-fiction on my TBR this month than I have YA or adult fiction or movies left to see. So that is why I am doing my top 10 non-fiction reads this year video today. So we've amped up the Christmas level. We've gone for the Christmas hairband. I've got my Christmas Starbucks with me today because I'm just in for the day. And if you would like, if you hear me talk about a book in here that you would like me to make a full video discussing, then please let me know in the comments. Vlogmas playlist will be linked up here in case you have missed any of them, and I will have my other top 10s coming up before the year is out, because that apparently is coming up quicker than I realised. I only have a few actual physical copies of these books, either because I just did them on audio, or I borrowed them from the library, or I've passed them on to somebody because I thought they were so awesome. So I will try and remember to insert some pictures so that you can see the covers. And as I say, if you want more, let me know in comments. Okay, that was a long introduction, I'm sorry. Okay, there are actually 10. I've narrowed it down to 10. The first of these is one of my most recent non-fiction reads, and this is The Other F Word by Angie Manfredi, and this one is about a celebration of the fat and the fierce. I've shown you these awesome end papers before. It's just wonderful, and it is intersectional and just brilliant. If I give you an example of some of the essay titles in here, A Body Like Mine, Fat and, Write Something Fat, 7 Things I Would Tell 11-year-old Me, Black Fat Femme, The Weight of a Queen, I Wear What I Want Because I Want to, Fatness and Horror, A Match Made in Not Heaven, a poem that's about nature and fatness, For the Love of Ursula's Revenge Body. That one is by Julie Murphy and is one of my favourites because I love Ursula as well. And I picked this book up. I could not put it back down again. I read it from cover to cover. I felt so seen and so heard and could identify with every single one of these essays. No matter who was writing it, I could just identify with something that they were saying about being fat and I just highly recommend it. If you are looking for other books about body positivity or just about being fat, this is got to be. And this is a library copy as well, so see if your library has a copy, because I put a hold on this one and it's amazing, and I'm a bit worried that no one else has put a hold on it after me. So get a hold on this one from your library. It's excellent, highly recommend. Obviously it's in my top 10 non-fiction of the year, and I've read quite a lot of non-fiction this year. Then on the same sort of topic, I also listened to and loved Body Positive Power by Megan Jane Crabbe, aka Body Posy Panda on Instagram. I love her Instagram. If you're not following her on Instagram, you need to be. She has the most amazing, colourful hair and pictures and things to say, and I just love what she has to say on there. And so I enjoyed listening to her book very much. Again, I could identify with a lot of things, and I felt like she gave me a lot more to think about and a lot more to talk about as well. And she reads the audiobook as well, so if you are used to her Insta stories, you will enjoy the audiobook. And that kind of goes hand in hand with this one. Then I really thought I still had a copy of this book on my shelf, but apparently I have passed it on to a worthy reader. And the next one on my list, obviously these are in no particular order, is Rage Becomes Her by Soraya Chemaly. I was lucky enough to be sent a review copy of this one, and just loved it and thought it was stunning. I ended up kind of switching between the hardback and the audiobook because I put a hold on the audiobook from my library, and I think that both do a really good job. I really like the colours that are used in the actual physical book and the way things are highlighted and the way things are laid out, but I also really enjoyed listening to the audiobook, and so either format really worked for me, and I'm sure it would work for you. So many things to say in this book, but I believe I talked more about it. If I didn't make a standalone video, I definitely talked a lot more in depth about it in my wrap up from the month that I read it, so you can hear a little bit more about that one. Then another book that I actually have to show you, this is a signed proof copy that I got at Book Expo and just devoured and loved, and I know my library has audio copies of this one as well, so if I hadn't read the proof I would be getting it through Hoopla through my library. But this is There Still Sex in the City by Candace Bushnell. Obviously we know Candace Bushnell as the writer of Sex and the City, with the famous Carrie Bradshaw, which started out as a column and then was turned into the HBO series we know and love. And then Candace has still been writing, and so this is a collection of columns and essays, and my copy is signed, which I'm very excited about. We were literally first in line to meet her. I really like Candace's fiction, but I really enjoy her non-fiction as well. So this is various essays, and they're divided into various different sections as well. So chapter 5 is the 15k face cream, the Russians and me, and then within that it's got subheadings. So welcome to Madison World sticker shock. Then we've got how much is that doggy in the window, the Russians get me. And this one just made me laugh. I could definitely identify with some of it. Again, it kind of also made me think it isn't all light-hearted and it isn't all partying like in the HBO series. This is very much like, okay, so what happens next? And I really like the fact that they decided to go in that direction and that Candace wrote this, and it was an absolute pleasure to meet her as well. I think going into the book, having actually stood and had a conversation with her about the book and what she was doing with it, was sort of added a little something extra, and this is one of my top 10 non-fiction of the year. Then we have Code Girls, which is one of the first books I read this year, and again I did this in audio, but I did have a physical copy, and then I passed it on to somebody else who I knew would enjoy it. I have a review of this one on my blog, and this one is about the women who kind of cracked codes and worked for the government, and was just their vital role that they played in a whole massive time span. This book really does cover a long time span. It doesn't just cover one particular kind of period of history. It's amazing, and they're amazing, and the book itself I think should be more highly profiled than it is. We've got the book Hidden Figures, which I read very quickly after having read Code Girls, and it again profiles women within, you know, that industry, within a male dominated industry, and I feel like because there was a movie made of that, it gets a higher profile. But actually Code Girls had so much interesting history in it, so many things that you wouldn't think about, and it's all done through a very like personal perspective. We have actual people there and their relationships with each other, and we get to know about their families and their life outside of work before we get to know about their achievements in work. So it really puts it into context for you. Okay, so this woman had like 5 kids and she was doing this, or this woman had was trying to make some extra money so that her son could have this amazing soapbox to go soapbox racing. And yeah, it was really impressive, and I'm so glad that I read it so early on in the year, because it was a great start to my reading year. It's the first full-length book that I finished this year. And then one that I read more recently, a couple that I read more recently actually, we've got hashtag IMOMSOHARD, which I'd seen all over Instagram, and I read as part of Nonfiction November. I listened to most of it on a plane. It is read by the authors, and because there are two authors, it's a bit like listening to them in conversation with each other. So there are parts which are completely separate from each other, but generally one person will have a take on a subject and the other person will then have a take on the subject. But there are moments where they cross over and they talk about their friendships together and the way they've helped each other out. And that was the aspect that kind of like elevated it from being like a great read to being a brilliant read for me. And I thought it was really entertaining, and even though I am not a mom, I could still identify with some aspects of it, and I feel like it made me even more aware of a lot of the things that my friends with kids are going through, even though there was a lot of it that I was already aware of. But they do talk about the support that their friends who don't have kids can give as well, and how it's not just other mom friends that can give you the support that you need when you are momming so hard. And then another one that I listened to really recently was The Hormone Diaries by Witton, which covers everything from puberty to menopause and everything in between to do with periods and sex and body changes and all the side effects and products and feelings that go along with that. It's read by the author and it's based on her YouTube series, which I absolutely loved, and just covers everything you could ever want to know about any aspect of hormones and periods, from puberty to menopause and postmenopause and babies and just everything. I kind of don't really need to say a lot more about it, apart from the fact that it is not just throwing facts at you. It is personal letters, it is personal accounts, it is first-hand experience, or at the very least second-hand experience. And I think that's what makes it so great, the fact that we have Hannah talking about her own personal experience of some of these things. And so she's actually coming from a place of first-hand knowledge, and yeah, I just really enjoyed it just as much as I loved her previous book doing it, which I believe made it onto my top 10 non-fiction 2 years ago, so that's cool. And then another one that I listened to very recently, started it in October, finished it in November. That is The Body by Bryson. Always love a Bill Bryson book, and I think when there's a year when there's a new Bill Bryson book, it will almost always be on this list. The thing that I really liked about this book is that it was divided into very, very specific sections, and each of those sections was fully explored. So we sort of start with the top part and work our way down, and we delve into the eye, the nose, the mouth, the ears, the skull, the brain. And each of those sections, there's historical facts and figures, there's scientific facts and figures, there's interesting tidbits that is, you know, perhaps something about the longest sneeze ever or something like that when it comes to the nose. And then there's a whole separate section on disease and medical care that goes with the body, but that's in a separate section, and I really like the fact that he chose to do that. So he chose to fully explore each part of the body before going into diseases and medicine, and did that as a separate thing, and I really, really like that. Then one that I can actually show you, again, part of Nonfiction November, I read Me by Elton John, and this has a sort of prologue and afterword, which is read by Elton John, but then the rest of the audiobook is read by Taron Egerton. And so the parts where he is talking about Elton's mum or Rod Stewart or other people in Elton's life at that time, He just does the voices so brilliantly, and I really love that. So whilst I do have a physical copy, because this one has pictures in it, I really recommend the audiobook just because the narration is so fantastic. So this one does have pictures in, and I wanted a physical copy because I feel like it is the kind of thing that I would pick up and put down and read individual parts and individual chapters again, just because some parts were particularly thought-provoking or interesting. And it's quite a gossipy book as well. I quite like the level of celebrity gossip in here too. There are things that I didn't know had happened, things that I didn't know had happened to the extent that they were, and then there are a few rumours that were set to right as well. So I just really enjoyed listening to this. It was a pleasure being stuck in traffic whilst listening to Taron Egerton narrate Elton John's book. I mean, that is one of life's small pleasures, is it not? And then we have, do I just have one left? Yes. The last book on my list is The Castle on Sunset, which kind of follows on from my liking of a little bit of gossip in Elton John's book. This is about Chateau Marmont, which of course is in, well, it's not technically in Hollywood, is it? It's at the end of Sunset Strip, basically, and is a notorious or infamous hotel, however you want to look at it. And this book explored the history of the hotel, as well as its many celebrity comings and goings, its many owners, and its reputation over the years and how it has changed. I saw this book on Instagram and knew I wanted to read it, and so put a hold on the audio copy from my library and got it. And I believe it's narrated by the journalist who wrote the book, and was just really interesting. I learned so much about certain eras of kind of Hollywood, and also about the hotel itself. I've seen it there on the hill. I've heard of people going there. I've seen people going there. I've heard of the infamous Beyonce party in the parking lot. And so it was really interesting to hear about it in all its glory and get all the facts and figures and all the history. And some of the people talked about I didn't know an awful lot about, and so has led me to kind of look up other things about them. And when I'm watching more sort of classic movies now, sometimes names will pop up and I'll be like, oh, heard about them in that book. Yes. Which is always really interesting. Again, recommend the audio, but it's not one of those where I'm like, oh, you have to listen to the audio is so well done. It was good, but I'm sure the book would also be good. And I suppose if you were reading the book, if there was a particular celebrity story that was going on a little bit more than you would like, you could skip on. So maybe I recommend the physical book over the audiobook. I know you can skip on with an audiobook, but it's harder to find your place. So there you have it, my top 10 non-fiction reads of the year. As I say, if you would like a full video on any of these books, let me know in the comments. Always happy to do that. Also, let me know what your kind of favourite non-fiction read or reads were this year. Because that is always interesting to know as well. Because when it comes to nonfiction, I think we all have a particular kind of nonfiction that we like especially, and so my nonfiction might be completely different to the kind that you read. So it'd be really interesting to hear what you enjoyed reading this year, or if there's any new releases that I missed that I might be able to add to my TBR for next year. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. I will be back with another Vlogmas video for you tomorrow, so make sure you are subscribed so that lands in your subscription feed, and I will see you tomorrow. Thanks for watching.